Hello, viewers. It's Q with Project Nerd, and I am here with Ross Taylor, who has a film that's going to be featured at the Lyon Film Festival in Colorado, the now virtual film festival, on October 3rd. And his film is called The Hardest Day. And I have to tell you, I know I mentioned it right before we started recording, but I watched this trailer, and as a pet owner, it really moved me. Like shockingly so in just such a short clip. And I have to say, I know just on the little background that I did that this kind of was spawned out of a photo essay first. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So I worked on a photo essay about a year before. And as I was wrapping up that, I was so moved, really honestly, by some of the auditory sounds I was hearing that I decided to explore it in feature film. And it's my first feature film. I've never done something to this degree, but I felt like that experience was so intense that it warranted and deserved a full sensory experience to provide a greater understanding of what it's like when the bond is broken.
Sure. I totally
Yeah.
understand. Uh, are you yourself a pet owner?
I'm not. I have plants.
Sure. Totally understand. Totally understood.
Froze
Uh,
up.
there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. No, I grew up with a little dog. Yeah, that's okay. I grew up with a little dog, and I was a photojournalist for quite a long time, and I was very mobile. That would be a good way to put it. So I don't think I would have been the
Sure.
best at ownership, but yeah,
Sure, but it's hard even if you're not a pet owner. I would imagine that just being there and experiencing these
sure.
moments with these people, I mean, it's hard not to have that empathy and that share that moment with them. What was that like? Like, what about those experiences were you like, we have to kind of have awareness on this. I need to make a film out of this.
Yeah, so I'm a professor at the University of Colorado Boulder, and I preface that by saying that as part of my tenure path, I'm charged to do work in the creative nature, and
Sure.
I want to add to the documentary canon. I don't want to do work that is already preceded me, and I want to add and provide insight to aspects of human behavior that haven't largely been explored. And a good friend of mine was going through this at the time, and I bore witness to what, just how intense this was for her. And
Sure.
then when I did research, I found almost no media, certainly not at a larger scale, in existence on it. And then when I began, that's when I really felt pulled to it. I didn't know what it was like, but when you're in
Sure.
a room with somebody experiencing this, and then they're going through this experience, and then more often than not, people would either thank me or an awareness of an exchange of gratitude, because I think people were witnessing this intense grief and they were having to shove it inside, or people weren't validating it. And I think there's a proxy of understanding that my presence validated what they were going through. And
Oh,
then I was
sure.
hooked. I mean, I think we're all motivated. Well, a variety of different reasons that we can draw from motivation, but mine is purpose and fulfillment. And I
Sure.
felt very fulfilled, and I felt a great sense of purpose when I was with people.
I love that. I absolutely
Yeah.
love that. I have to ask, so while you were there and you were filming these moments, were there any people that you like especially connected to, or were there any stories that you want to kind of hint at? Like I said, I saw the trailer, so I haven't seen the full film yet. Are there any that like maybe surprised you how it
Yeah.
went as opposed to what you were expecting?
Yeah, I think you can never predict how somebody will act in those final few moments. I
Sure.
remember a man who lived on a boat, who you would never think if you met him in passing. He was a diver of sorts, and you would never think if you met him in person that he would react like this. But he
Sure.
had one of the strongest emotional reactions to that moment in time, and it just cracked my heart wide open watching
Sure.
him, you know, to put the dog down on his boat, and he kept calling him, you're my first mate, you're my first mate. And it's like, oh,
Oh,
and
oh
just
gosh.
witnessing it. Yeah, exactly. I think it's that kind of surprise that you because you don't know somebody's backstory with their animal and they're tied to that.
Sure.
You don't know what you're experiencing until you see it.
Sure. Kind of firsthand.
Sure.
Um, So how did you find these people that you were going to feature? What did you
Yeah.
contact a veterinarian, or what was kind of the
Absolutely. Yeah.
sure,
So it was pretty difficult at the early onset when I found out and learned about this.
sure,
Most people, a lot of organizations either didn't see the value in it or didn't understand or didn't respond. But one
sure.
organization in Florida did respond. It's called Lap of Love. It's now the largest at-home pet euthanasia organization in the nation.
Wow.
The CEO happened to be flying through Denver, where I'm based. I beeline to Denver Airport, and we met
Sure.
on a layover of hers. I explained what I was doing. She felt trust in me from that conversation, invited me down, and 2 weeks later, I was on a plane. And it's
Wow.
through their organization that this was possible. We cleared everything before meeting the families. We would,
Sure.
make sure it was okay. I never showed up at somebody's house unannounced. They always knew that I was coming, and they had agreed to it. And part of the agreement, I'll just add quickly, is that I would always photograph them with their dog or cat, like a family portrait, and I would, give that to them
Oh, sure.
if they would, if they desired that as well as a moment of record, in addition
I,
to documenting the moment.
I think that's a great thing. And as someone, I have a dog. I have a golden retriever, and
Oh,
he's still pretty
yeah,
young, and so
good.
I haven't had to experience this yet.
Yeah,
But I can only imagine, as a film lover, I would almost appreciate having that moment, even though it's a hard moment and it's a sad moment, but having
sure.
that moment to kind of hold on to. So I definitely understand the value in having that, even if it's just from the pet owner's perspective.
Yeah.
Um,
A lot of
uh,
people would self-document that moment as well, for sure.
sure. So I love that. Have any of the subjects gotten to see your film yet?
Yes. Yes.
And
And in
it,
fact,
how,
I'm still in touch with some of them, in fact, on a
sure,
relatively regular basis in some
sure.
cases.
That's wonderful. What was their response? Was it
Yeah.
to see these other people also going through kind of what they were going through?
Yeah, I think so. You can't get around the fact that if you watch the film, it's intense. And so I
Sure.
think people who are experiencing that, I don't want to gloss over that. It's hard to watch, but I will say a consistent theme that I have heard and feedback that I've gotten is the sense of gratitude that they feel like they're part of a community that validates how they were feeling. And I think that's a key takeaway. I think one of the things that I discovered from this that I honestly didn't think about a lot until the project was unrecognized grief or disenfranchised grief, the
Sure.
documentation of grief that doesn't have a place but that we're all experiencing, and it is not tied. And we saw this witnessed in this project. When the print part of this published, it went global. We had documentation of millions of views, and I would have never thought that from this topic, but I think it tapped into this deeper connection that you may feel one day, but you
Sure.
won't be able to process with somebody else.
Sure. No, I completely understand that. And I think
No,
that makes total sense. And I think um, I think it has a very well-deserved place kind of for people. And I hope that not only can they kind of learn about the human experience by watching it, but kind of connect with um, and not feel so alone on this hard day. You know what I mean?
for sure.
Now, not to get away from the film, but also just as a filmmaker in general, I want to ask, obviously it's clear to anyone watching this right now that we're doing a Zoom interview, which is a little bit different than normally would be done at a film festival.
Yeah.
How is this experience of showing your film during, a pandemic, way to tiptoe around it during a pandemic? How has that kind of affected the experience of being a filmmaker? Is it different for you?
So I think the short answer is I don't know. This is my first pandemic, and I'm being playful that it's my first feature film. I have no experience beyond this. It's obviously a very unusual time. So we'll see. I mean, in the next few months, we're going to start working on finding ways to explore distribution for this.
Sure.
So I think some of it's probably been muted. We've gotten into about 10 film festivals, and
That's
it's
awesome.
been muted because of the pandemic. But I don't want it to stay there. Just in this
Sure.
experience, I'm still planning on identifying the right audience. I don't know if this is the right film for everybody, but
Sure.
there's an audience that we want to go after and go find.
I fully agree, and I have no doubt at all that many of the Project Nerd viewers
Yeah.
will be very drawn to this project. I think many of us are pet owners, many of us are
Yeah.
pet lovers, and I think that also many of us are fans of the human experience. So I think this kind of speaks to people on several different levels. And even though it's a hard subject and a hard topic,
Yeah.
it's I think it's one that's well needed, and I'm excited to see the full thing myself. Now I have to ask, do you? I know you said next up is distribution, looking at that option, but do you have any concepts for what a next project may look like beyond
Sure.
this?
I'm already working on it. So, in Colorado and Denver, where I'm based, there's
Mm-hmm.
a remarkable man named PJ Parmar. He's a medical doctor, and he is the largest and shared space for refugees in the state of Colorado and likely the greater West. So he
Oh
has this
wow.
building that is run by and serves refugees. So the refugee it's a food court run by refugees. It's a shopping area that's run by refugees. The medical services are largely only for refugees, and he's serving this population. I think given the political backdrop right now, what we're seeing, it's even more timely. So I've been working on
Sure.
that film since January. It got a little derailed when the pandemic hit, but we picked it
I
up
would
over the
imagine.
summer. And then, in fact, this morning I was logging footage just today. So I'll edit and have this hopefully done early next year.
Sure. Well, I
Yeah.
love that. I mean, it definitely seems like you gravitate towards projects or subject matter that hit a little bit deeper than surface level.
Yeah.
And so that sounds wonderful, and I
Yeah.
definitely am excited to learn more about that. And so then I have to ask, that kind of leads me to the next question. Since you are navigating making a film during the pandemic, and you have it to judge against your experience making The Hardest Day, I can only imagine this is a totally different kind of circus that you're trying to
Yeah,
navigate.
it's emotionally a lot easier. I'll say that the Hardest Day was one of the most difficult emotional experiences, because every time I also edited it, and every time you go in, you're reliving it in ways
Sure.
that if you're experiencing it, with all due respect, the event happens in about 30 minutes and then you move on. So
Sure.
it's I will say that it's a different experience, a lot lighter. It's a lot more. It's not as intense emotionally.
Sure.
So that part is different for sure.
Sure. Well, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah,
I'm so glad that
cool.
you took the time to talk with
Yeah,
us so we
great to
could
talk
kind of
with you
bring
too.
attention to your project.
Thanks for
So
everything that you're
everybody,
doing.
oh my gosh,
Yeah,
absolutely. So everybody check it out. This is
cool.
Ross Taylor. His film, The Hardest Day, will be featured at the Lions Film Festival, which is digital, on October 3rd. Go check it out. Again, from Project Nerd, we thank you very much and hope to talk to you again when your next film rolls around.
Great. Thank you, Q, and good luck to
Thank
you.
you so much. Absolutely. You as well. Have a great one.
Cool. Bye.